My son sent me handmade birthday chocolates. The next day he asked, "So, how were the chocolates?" I said, "I gave them to your wife and the kids. They love sweets." He went silent for a second, then screamed, "You did what?" I held the phone away from my ear. The sound coming through was raw, animal, not the voice of a 30-year-old tech mogul who just closed a $20 million deal. This was something else, something I didn't recognize. "Dad, those were for you, just you. Do you understand?" I looked out the window of my home office, watched the neighbors walking their dog, normal suburban evening, normal conversation with my son, except nothing about this felt normal. "Kevin, they're chocolates." I thought, "You thought wrong. God, why do you always do this?" I sat down slowly. My knees hurt. 55 years old, and my body reminded me every day. Do what? Ruin things. Make everything about everyone else. Those were special. I made them myself. I know. That's why I wanted to share them with who? With Rachel? With those kids who barely know you exist? The line crackled. I could hear him breathing hard on the other end. "Kevin, I don't understand what's happening right now." "Of course you don't. You never do." He hung up. I sat there holding the phone, staring at the black screen. Outside, the dog barked. The neighbor laughed at something. Life continued like nothing had happened, but something had. Something fundamental had cracked in the relationship between my son and me, and I couldn't identify when it started. The chocolates had been beautiful. Dark chocolate truffles with gold leaf, arranged in a wooden box with my name engraved on the lid. Kevin had always been talented with his hands, even as a kid. Before the tech company, before the money, before Rachel. Rachel. I thought about my daughter-in-law, 28 years old, stunning in that calculated way that came from money and good genes, and knowing exactly how to use both. She'd built an empire on social media, 500,000 followers watching her curate a perfect life. Perfect house, perfect husband, perfect family. Everything filtered and staged and sold to people who desperately wanted to believe in perfection. I'd never trusted her. The thought came unbidden, but I didn't push it away. 3 years since the wedding. 3 years of watching my son transform from someone I knew into someone I didn't. The arrogance had always been there. Kevin came by that honestly, from me probably, but this new coldness, this distance, that was new. My phone buzzed, a text from my wife, Linda. "Dinner in 20. Meatloaf." I typed back a thumbs-up emoji and immediately felt old. 55 and using emojis to communicate with the woman I'd been married to for 32 years. The house was quiet. Too quiet. It had been like this since Kevin moved out, since we became empty nesters with too many rooms and not enough noise to fill them. I'd sold my business 5 years ago, took the payout, and now did consulting work that barely kept me interested. The money was good. The meaning was gone. I walked downstairs, each step a small reminder that I wasn't young anymore. The house smelled like home. Onions, tomato sauce. That particular scent that only came from Linda's cooking. She was at the stove, her back to me, moving with the efficiency of someone who'd made this meal 1,000 times. "Kevin called," I said. She didn't turn around. "About the chocolates? You knew?" "He called me first, asked if you'd eaten them yet. When I said I hadn't seen you eat any, he got quiet. Then he hung up and I guess called you." I leaned against the counter. "What's going on with him?" Linda stirred the sauce. "I don't know." "That's not an answer. It's the only one I have." She finally turned to look at me. Her face was tired. When had she started looking so tired? "He's changed, Daniel. Ever since Rachel." "You think it's her?" "I think marriage changes people. Sometimes for the better." She paused. "Sometimes not." We ate dinner in relative silence. The meatloaf was good, like always. I complimented it, like always. We talked about small things, the neighbor's new fence, the book Linda was reading, whether we needed to replace the water heater, normal conversation, safe conversation, the kind of talk that filled space without touching anything real. But my mind was elsewhere, on Kevin's voice, on that scream, on the way he'd said, "You always ruin things." After dinner, I went back to my office and opened my laptop. Old habits. When something bothered me, I researched, I investigated. For 30 years, I'd built a business on being thorough, on following threads until they led somewhere concrete. I wasn't going to stop now. I started with the obvious. Rachel's social media. Her Instagram was a masterclass in curation. Every photo filtered to perfection. Her and Kevin at charity galas. Rachel doing yoga on their balcony. Shots of their penthouse apartment with city views that probably cost more than most people's houses. The comments were uniformly positive, thousands of people telling her how blessed she was, how perfect her life looked. But I wasn't interested in the surface. I clicked through to her followers, started scanning names, lots of influencer types, brands, celebrities. Then I saw something that made me pause. Martin Kowalski. I knew that name. Martin had been my business partner 15 years ago, before we'd had a falling out over some deals that went south. We hadn't spoken since. Why was he following Rachel? I clicked on his profile. Private. But his profile picture showed him at some gala, shaking hands with someone I recognized from Kevin's company. Another thread. I spent the next 2 hours going down rabbit holes. Kevin's company, Technova, had gone public 3 years ago. The stock had done well. Kevin was worth, on paper at least, somewhere north of $50 million. Not bad for a kid who'd started coding in our basement. But something nagged at me. I pulled up the SEC filings, started reading through the corporate structure. Kevin was CEO, owned 30% of the company. Rachel wasn't listed anywhere official, but I found her mentioned in a few tech blogs as an influential advisor to Technova's marketing strategy. I dug deeper, found articles about Technova's rapid expansion, their aggressive acquisition strategy. They'd bought up 4 smaller companies in the past year alone. The money for those acquisitions had come from somewhere. I opened a new browser tab, pulled up my own financial accounts. I had a trust fund set up years ago, money earmarked for Kevin's future. The balance should have been around $2 million. It wasn't. It was at $1.3 million. $700,000? Gone. I checked the transaction history. 3 withdrawals over the past 18 months. All authorized by me. Except I'd never authorized anything. My chest tightened. I zoomed in on the signatures. They looked like mine. Perfect copies. But I knew my own signature, knew the exact way I crossed my T's and looped my D's. These were close, but not quite right. Someone had forged my name. I sat back in my chair, feeling cold despite the warm office. The pieces were starting to come together, forming a picture I didn't want to see, but I forced myself to look at it anyway. Kevin needed money. Kevin had access to my accounts through old paperwork from when I'd first set up the trust. Kevin had the technical skills to create convincing forgeries, and Kevin had Rachel, who knew how to manipulate images, create narratives, sell stories to people who wanted to believe them. My son was stealing from me. The thought should have made me angry. Instead, I felt something worse. A deep, cold certainty. This wasn't new. This had been happening for a while. I just hadn't wanted to see it. I closed the laptop and sat in the dark office, listening to the house settle around me. Linda was watching TV in the living room. I could hear the muffled voices through the walls. Outside, the neighborhood was quiet. Everyone in their homes, living their lives, unaware that mine was fracturing. My phone buzzed. Another text from Kevin. Sorry about earlier. Stressed with work. Let's have dinner this weekend. You, me, Rachel, family time. I stared at the message. It read friendly, casual, like the phone call had never happened, like he hadn't screamed at me about chocolates. Like everything was fine. I typed back, sounds good? Saturday? Perfect. Rachel's picking the place. She'll text you details. Of course she would. Rachel always picked. Rachel always controlled. I put the phone down and looked at my reflection in the dark window, a 55-year-old man with gray hair and tired eyes, watching his son slip away into something he didn't understand. But I was going to understand. I was going to figure out exactly what Kevin and Rachel were doing, and then I was going to decide what to do about it. Before we continue, hit the hype button, subscribe, and like the video to help the channel grow. Tell us which city you are from in the comments. We'd love to get to know our audience better. Saturday came with rain, the kind of steady downpour that turned suburban streets into rivers and made everyone drive 10 miles under the speed limit. Linda and I left early anyway, neither of us wanting to be late to dinner with Kevin and Rachel. Linda wore her blue dress, the one she saved for occasions she considered important. I wore slacks and a button-down, feeling overdressed and uncomfortable. The restaurant was in the city, 45 minutes from our suburb. Rachel had chosen a place called Lumiere, one of those establishments where the menu didn't list prices and the waitstaff spoke in hushed, reverent tones about culinary experiences. I'd looked it up online. Entrees started at $60 for pasta. We pulled up to the valet stand. A young man in a rain-soaked uniform opened Linda's door, offering his hand like she was royalty. I handed over my keys to another valet, watched him slide into my 10-year-old sedan with barely concealed disappointment. Not the kind of car they usually saw here, probably. Inside, the restaurant was all dark wood and dim lighting, designed to make you feel like you'd stepped into some European castle. A hostess with perfect teeth and a tablet checked us in. The Morrison party. I nodded. Apparently we were the Morrison party now, not the Lawson party. Kevin must have made the reservation under Rachel's maiden name. Right this way. She led us through the restaurant, past tables of people who all looked wealthy and bored, to a private corner booth. Kevin and Rachel were already there. Kevin stood up, smiled. Mom, Dad, you made it. He hugged Linda first, then me. The embrace felt mechanical, like he was following a script. He'd lost weight since I'd last seen him. His suit hung differently, and there were shadows under his eyes. Rachel remained seated, offering a small wave. So glad you could come? Her dress probably cost more than my car payment. Her hair was perfect, makeup flawless. She looked like she'd stepped out of one of her Instagram posts. We sat. A waiter materialized instantly, offering wine suggestions I didn't understand. Kevin ordered for the table, a bottle of something French that the waiter nodded approvingly at. So, Kevin said once the waiter left. How's everything? Good, Linda said. Quiet. You know us. Dad's been consulting? Here and there, I said. Keeps me busy. Rachel's eyes flicked to me, then away. Daniel, Kevin mentioned you're working with some interesting clients. Anyone we'd know? The question felt like a test. Mostly small firms. Nothing glamorous. Dad's being modest, Kevin said. He's still got connections all over the industry. The wine arrived. The waiter made a show of presenting the bottle, pouring a small amount for Kevin to taste, waiting for his approval. Kevin sipped, nodded. The waiter poured for everyone. To family, Kevin raised his glass. We all clinked glasses. The wine was good, better than anything I'd buy for myself. I drank and wondered how much this evening was going to cost my son, or maybe he was wondering how much it was going to cost me. Dinner proceeded with painful politeness. We ordered appetizers I couldn't pronounce. We discussed Rachel's latest social media campaign, something about sustainable fashion that had gotten her featured in a magazine. We talked about Linda's book club. We carefully avoided anything substantive. I watched Kevin throughout the meal. He was performing, laughing at the right moments, touching Rachel's hand, playing the role of successful young husband. But underneath, something was off. He drank more than he ate. His eyes kept darting to his phone, which he'd placed face down beside his plate. Rachel dominated the conversation. She had a way of steering every topic back to herself, to her work, to her brand. Linda listened politely, asked appropriate questions. I mostly stayed quiet, observing. Daniel, you're being awfully silent, Rachel said during a lull. Everything okay? Just enjoying the meal. Kevin tells me you gave away those chocolates he made you. There it was. I'd been waiting for her to bring it up. I shared them with family, I said. Didn't realize that was wrong. Kevin shifted uncomfortably. It's fine, Dad. Water under the bridge. Is it? I looked at him directly. Because you seemed pretty upset on the phone. I was just... He glanced at Rachel. I'd put a lot of work into them. Wanted you to enjoy them yourself. I did enjoy them. By sharing them. That's how I was raised. Good things are meant to be shared. Rachel's smile tightened. Of course. Though sometimes gifts are meant for specific people. You know, personal gestures. Like forging someone's signature on financial documents? The words came out before I'd consciously decided to say them. The table went silent. Linda's hand froze halfway to her wine glass. Kevin's face went pale. What? Kevin's voice was barely above a whisper. $700,000, I said. Gone from my trust fund, 3 withdrawals over 18 months. All with my signature, except I never signed anything. Rachel's expression didn't change. Daniel, I think you're confused. I'm not confused. I spent the last week going through my accounts. Someone's been stealing from me. Someone who has access to my financial information. Someone who knows how to create convincing forgeries. Kevin shook his head. Dad, this is crazy. I would never... Wouldn't you? I leaned forward. Your company's been acquiring smaller firms. Where'd that money come from? Investors or family? I have investors. Real investors. I don't need to steal from my father. Then explain the signatures. I can't explain what doesn't exist. But his voice lacked conviction. He was lying. I could see it in the way he wouldn't meet my eyes, the way his hand trembled slightly as he reached for his wine. Linda touched my arm. Daniel, maybe this isn't the place. When is the place? When he's taken everything? When there's nothing left? Rachel stood up. I think we're done here. Sit down, I said quietly. Excuse me? Sit. Down. I kept my voice level, but something in my tone made her pause. We're going to finish this conversation, all of us. She sat, but her eyes flashed with anger. Good. I wanted her angry. Angry people made mistakes. I know what you're doing, I said, looking between Kevin and Rachel. Both of you. I know about the money. I know about the manipulation. I've spent 30 years reading people, reading businesses, reading situations. Did you really think I wouldn't notice? Kevin's face had gone from pale to red. You don't know anything. I know you've been avoiding me for months. I know you call your mother, but not me. I know you made the reservation tonight under Rachel's name, not ours. I know you're ashamed of where you came from, of who raised you, because it doesn't fit the image she's building. Rachel's voice was ice. That's not fair. Fair? You want to talk about fair? I worked my entire life to build something, to leave something for my son. And you, I pointed at her. You've convinced him that he deserves it now, that he's entitled to it, that taking from his father isn't really stealing, it's just accelerating his inheritance? You're being paranoid, Kevin said. Am I? Then prove it. Show me the company's financial records. Show me where the acquisition money came from. If I'm wrong, I'll apologize. Right here, right now. The silence stretched. Around us, other diners continued their meals, oblivious to the drama unfolding in our corner. The waiter approached, saw the tension, and quickly retreated. Finally, Kevin spoke. I'm your son. You should trust me. Trust is earned, I said, and you've been doing everything possible to lose mine. Rachel grabbed her purse. Kevin, we're leaving. No, Kevin said, but he stood up anyway, like a puppet on her strings. Dad, I don't know what's gotten into you lately, but you're wrong. About everything. We'll see. They left. Linda and I sat in the expensive restaurant, surrounded by the wreckage of our family dinner. The waiter finally approached, looking uncomfortable. Will there be anything else? Just the check, I said. He brought it. The total was $437. I paid with my credit card, left a generous tip because none of this was the waiter's fault. In the car, Linda finally spoke. What are you doing? What I should have done months ago. You just accused our son of theft in public. I know what I did. Daniel. Linda. I turned to look at her. He's stealing from us. From me, and she's helping him. I need you to trust me on this. She was quiet for a long moment. Rain drummed on the roof of the car. Finally, she nodded. What do you need? Time. And your help? Tell me what to do. I started the engine and pulled out into the rain. My mind was already working, planning, calculating. Kevin and Rachel thought they were smart. They thought they'd gotten away with it. But they'd made one critical mistake. They'd underestimated me. I wasn't just going to expose them. I was going to destroy them. Phase 2 was the public relations nightmare. I'd spent weeks preparing for this possibility. If Kevin chose wrong, and I'd known he would, then I needed to act fast and precisely. Rachel had spent years building a narrative, curating an image, controlling a story. Now I was going to shred that story into pieces. James had connections in journalism. So did I. And we had something journalists loved, a scandal with receipts. The first article dropped 3 days after my confrontation with Kevin. A respected tech blog published a piece titled Technova's Troubled Numbers, an investigation. It was meticulously researched, carefully worded to avoid libel, but devastating in its implications. The article questioned Technova's accounting practices, pointed out discrepancies in their SEC filings, and included quotes from unnamed sources inside the company expressing concerns. The stock dropped 8% in one day. The second article came from a financial news site. Investor alert. Questions surround Technova CEO's family connections. This one focused on Kevin using my reputation to secure investments, included interviews with some of the investors who'd been burned, and raised questions about conflicts of interest. The stock dropped another 12%. By the end of the week, Technova was in free fall. Kevin held a press conference, tried to calm investors, reassured them that the company was solid. But he looked nervous, unprepared. Rachel stood beside him, her smile tight and false. I watched the press conference from my office at home. Linda sat beside me. He's lying, she said quietly. Even I can see it. Everyone can see it. That's the point. The SEC announced an investigation 2 days later. Just a preliminary inquiry, they said, standard procedure. But the damage was done. Technova's remaining investors started pulling out. Partners began distancing themselves. The company that Kevin had built, that had been his identity and pride, was imploding. But I wasn't done with Rachel. Her turn came next, and it was more personal. Because while Kevin had stolen my money and used my reputation, Rachel had attacked something deeper. Family. She'd poisoned the relationship between a father and son. She'd calculated and manipulated and lied, all while presenting a perfect face to the world. Time to show the world her real face. James had found more than Rachel's sealed court records. He'd found people, former friends, ex-boyfriends, old business partners, people who had stories, people who'd been burned by Rachel Morrison before she'd become Rachel Morrison Lawson, influencer and wife of a tech mogul. I didn't approach these people directly. That would be too obvious, too traceable. Instead, James connected them with journalists who were already sniffing around the Technova story. He suggested they might find it interesting to look into Rachel's background, her history, the gap between the image she presented and the reality she'd lived. The first expose appeared in a lifestyle magazine. The Real Rachel Morrison Lawson, an influencer's fabricated past. It was thorough and damning. The article detailed how Rachel had claimed to come from wealth when she'd actually grown up in a middle-class suburb, how she'd stolen the name Morrison Holdings from a family she'd babysat for as a teenager, how her family estate featured in her posts was actually a bed and breakfast she'd rented for photo shoots. But the worst revelations came from her former business partner, the one who'd sued her for fraud at 23. Despite the sealed court records, the woman was willing to talk. She described how Rachel had forged her signature on contracts, how she'd stolen client lists and proprietary information, how she'd left the business in ruins while walking away unscathed. She's a chameleon, the woman said in the article. She becomes whatever she needs to be to get what she wants, and she doesn't care who she destroys in the process. The story went viral. Rachel's Instagram, once filled with admiring comments, became a war zone. Followers accused her of lying. Brands pulled sponsorships. Her carefully constructed empire began to crumble as people realized it had been built on fiction. Rachel tried to respond. She posted a long statement about jealous exes and tabloid journalism and standing in her truth. But it rang hollow. The evidence was too strong, the testimony too credible. Her followers weren't buying it anymore. Within 2 weeks, she'd lost half her following. The remaining half seemed to stick around just to watch the collapse. Kevin tried to defend her. He gave an interview to a tech podcast, talked about how the media was creating narratives and tearing down successful women. But he came across as desperate, as someone scrambling to protect an image that was already shattered. I watched it all unfold with a grim satisfaction. This wasn't pleasure, it was justice. They'd tried to destroy me quietly, to take what I'd built and turn it against me. Now the world was watching them get exactly what they deserved. But Linda was worried. "They're going to figure out it's you," she said one evening. We were in the living room, the TV playing news coverage of Technova's latest crisis. 2 board members had resigned that afternoon. "Let them figure it out. What can they do?" "Sue you, hurt you. Daniel, you've made enemies of your own son and his wife." "They made enemies of themselves." "That's not what I mean." She turned to face me fully. "I support you, I do. But I'm scared of what this is doing to you. You're not sleeping, you barely eat. All you do is plan the next move, the next revelation. When does it end?" I didn't have an answer. Or maybe I did, but didn't want to say it out loud. It ended when they had nothing left. When Kevin and Rachel understood, truly understood, what they'd done. My phone rang. Unknown number. I answered anyway. "Mr. Lawson, this is Jennifer Park from the SEC. I'd like to ask you some questions about Technova and your relationship with Kevin Lawson." "Of course," I said. "When would you like to meet?" We met at a federal building downtown. Jennifer Park was mid-30s, sharp-eyed, and carried herself with the confidence of someone who'd made plenty of cases stick. She recorded our conversation, took notes, asked detailed questions. I answered honestly. I showed her the forged documents, the financial trail, everything. I explained how Kevin had stolen from my trust fund, how he'd used my name to defraud investors. I didn't embellish or exaggerate. I didn't need to. The facts were damning enough. "Why come forward now?" she asked. "Because I wanted to give my son a chance to make it right. He chose not to take it." "This must be difficult. He's your child." "He stopped being my child when he decided I was just a resource to exploit." She studied me for a moment. "We'll need you to testify if this goes to trial." "I'll testify." After the meeting, I sat in my car in the parking garage and finally let myself feel it, the weight of what I was doing. I was actively working to send my son to prison. I was destroying his company, his marriage, his future. A part of me recoiled from that, the part that remembered Kevin as a boy, bright-eyed and curious, building robots in the garage, asking endless questions about how things worked. But that boy was gone. In his place was someone I didn't recognize, someone who'd chosen greed and lies over family and integrity. I started the car and drove home. That night, Kevin called. First time in weeks. Dad. Kevin, I know what you're doing. Good. The SEC investigation, the articles, the exposure of Rachel's past, that's all you, isn't it? You had a choice. You made it. You're destroying my life. His voice cracked. Everything I built. Everything I worked for. You're taking it all away. I'm not taking anything. I'm revealing what was already there. You built your success on lies and theft. Did you think there wouldn't be consequences? I'm your son. Then act like it. Tell the truth. Return the money. Face what you've done. Silence. Then, it's too late for that. I know. Rachel says we should disappear, leave the country, start over somewhere else. Rachel's a sociopath who's only thinking about herself. If you go with her, you'll end up taking the fall for everything. She'll find a way to make you the villain and walk away clean. That's what she does. You don't know her. I know exactly who she is. The question is, do you? More silence. I could hear him breathing, hear the struggle happening inside him. I loved you, he said finally. I wanted to make you proud. Then you took a very strange path to show it. He hung up. Linda came into the office. Was that Kevin? Yes. What did he say? That I'm destroying his life. She sat down in the chair across from my desk. Are you? He destroyed it himself. I'm just making sure everyone sees. Daniel. She paused, choosing words carefully. I know you're angry. I know you're hurt. But at some point you have to ask yourself if this revenge is worth losing your son forever. He's already lost. Rachel made sure of that. Rachel's manipulative and cruel, but Kevin's an adult. He made his choices. Maybe somewhere underneath all of this, there's still a part of him that can be saved. I wanted to believe that, but I'd seen Kevin's face at the restaurant, in his office, heard his voice on the phone just now. He wasn't sorry for what he'd done. He was sorry he'd been caught. If he wants to be saved, I said, he knows what he needs to do. But Kevin didn't do anything. Instead, the situation escalated. Rachel posted a tearful video on Instagram, claiming they were victims of a vendetta by Kevin's father. She didn't name me directly, but she didn't have to. She described a toxic family member who couldn't accept their success, who'd launched a campaign to destroy them out of jealousy. The video got mixed reactions. Some people believed her, rallied to her defense, but many saw through it, pointed out that she'd been exposed as a liar, that her tears seemed calculated. The media picked it up anyway. Tech CEO caught between father and wife, read one headline. Family feud destroys promising startup, read another. They tried to frame it as a tragedy, a family torn apart by conflict and misunderstanding, but I knew the truth. This wasn't a family feud. This was consequences. Technova's stock continued to fall. More investors pulled out. Kevin announced layoffs. 30% of the workforce, effective immediately. The company that had once been valued at over $100 million was now worth a fraction of that and dropping every day. I should have felt victorious. Instead, I felt tired. But I couldn't stop now. Not when I was this close to the end. The final pieces fell into place faster than I'd anticipated. Technova officially filed for bankruptcy 3 weeks after the SEC investigation began. Kevin released a statement blaming market conditions and unforeseen circumstances. But nobody was fooled. The company had been mismanaged, over-leveraged, and built on questionable accounting. The bankruptcy trustee would be sorting through the mess for years. Kevin's investors were furious. Several filed lawsuits, claiming fraud and misrepresentation. Martin Kowalski called me again. They're going after him hard, Martin said. Criminal charges are possible. The SEC is building a case. Good. Daniel, I know you're angry, but he's still your son. Are you sure you want to watch him go to prison? I'm sure I want him to face consequences for what he did. If that means prison, so be it. Martin sighed. You always were stubborn. But Kevin didn't go quietly. He hired an expensive legal team, started preparing his defense, and his defense strategy became clear quickly. Blame me. Claim I was a vindictive father who'd sabotaged his company out of jealousy. Paint himself as the victim of parental abuse. Rachel helped spin the narrative. She gave interviews, always careful to seem sympathetic and wronged. She talked about how I'd always resented Kevin's success, how I'd tried to control them, how they'd been forced to distance themselves for their mental health. It was a masterclass in manipulation. She was trying to rewrite history, make herself and Kevin the heroes of a story about escaping toxic family. Some people bought it, but the evidence was too strong, the documentation too clear, And then I played my final card. I'd been saving something, a recording. Linda had been right to worry about me not sleeping. Those sleepless nights hadn't been wasted. I'd spent them going through old family videos, old recordings, looking for anything that might be useful. And I'd found something. A video from Kevin and Rachel's engagement party 3 years ago. In it, Rachel had a bit too much champagne and talked to a friend, thinking no one else was listening. But the camera had caught it. The microphone had picked it up. Of course I said yes, Rachel said in the video, slightly slurred. Did you see his bank account? Did you see his father's estate? I'll be set for life. And if Kevin doesn't work out, the divorce will be very profitable. It was damning, irrefutable proof that Rachel had married Kevin for money, that she'd planned to exploit him from the start. I'd made copies, authenticated them, had experts verify they hadn't been manipulated. James had advised against using it. This is personal, Daniel. It'll hurt Kevin deeply. He should be hurt. He should know what she really is. He might already know and just not want to admit it. Then he needs to admit it. I released the video through a media contact, someone who'd been covering the Technova collapse. They posted it with an article titled "The Marriage of Convenience," Rachel Morrison Lawson's own words. It exploded. Within hours, the video had been viewed millions of times. Social media erupted. Even people who'd been defending Rachel turned against her. The evidence of her calculated manipulation was right there. In her own words, impossible to deny. Kevin's lawyers tried to suppress it, claimed it was edited, taken out of context. But the full video was released. 20 minutes of engagement party footage, all authenticated, showing that nothing had been manipulated. Rachel went silent. No more tearful videos, no more interviews. She deleted her Instagram account entirely, cutting herself off from the empire she'd built. Her career as an influencer was over. And Kevin finally broke. He showed up at my house on a Tuesday morning. Linda answered the door and called for me. I came downstairs to find my son standing in the entryway, looking like he hadn't slept in days. His suit was wrinkled, his eyes red. "Can we talk?" he asked quietly. Linda looked at me. I nodded. "In my office." We went upstairs. I sat behind my desk. Kevin sat across from me in the same chair where I'd planned his destruction. "You win," he said. "Is that what you want to hear?" "You win. The company's gone. The money's gone. My reputation's destroyed. Rachel's leaving me. You got everything you wanted." "I didn't want any of this. You forced my hand." "I know." He looked down at his hands. "I know, Dad. I got lost. Rachel was so confident, so sure of everything. She had these plans, these ideas, and I thought we could have it all. The success, the money, the life. I thought I deserved it. At my expense. Yes, at your expense. I convinced myself it wasn't really stealing because eventually it would all be mine anyway, right? That's what I told myself. And Rachel reinforced it, kept saying you were holding me back, that you were too conservative, too scared. She made it sound like I was just taking what was rightfully mine. $700,000 was rightfully yours? No. He looked up, met my eyes. No, it wasn't. I stole from you. I forged your signature. I lied to investors using your name. I destroyed our relationship for money and ego. I know what I did. This was the moment I'd been waiting for. My son finally admitting his guilt, finally acknowledging what he'd done. I should have felt satisfaction. Instead, I felt empty. What do you want from me, Kevin? I don't know. Forgiveness? Understanding? I know I don't deserve either. You're right. You don't. He nodded, looked like he might cry. The SEC is going to press charges. My lawyers say I could be looking at 5 to 10 years, more if they can prove intentional fraud. What about Rachel? She's making a deal, testifying against me in exchange for immunity. She's going to blame everything on me, say I manipulated her, coerced her, that she was just following my lead. Her lawyers already spun the whole narrative. She'll walk away and I'll take the fall. Sounds like Rachel. I should have listened to you. About her. About everything. He ran his hands through his hair. God, Dad, how did I get here? How did I become this person? One choice at a time. One compromise. One lie. They add up. Can you ever forgive me? The question hung in the air. Could I? Should I? My son had betrayed me in the deepest way possible. He'd stolen from me, lied about me, tried to destroy my reputation. He'd chosen his wife over his father, greed over integrity, but he was still my son. I don't know, I said honestly. Maybe someday, but not today, not now. You haven't even begun to pay for what you did. Kevin stood up. I know. I wanted you to know I'm sorry. For all of it. And I wanted to tell you that I'm going to plead guilty. No trial, no more lies. I'm going to take responsibility. That's a start. He walked to the door, paused. I loved you, Dad. I still do. I know you probably don't believe that, but it's true. I lost my way. And by the time I realized it, I was too far gone to find my way back. You could have asked for help. I know, but I didn't, and now I have to live with that. He left. I sat in my office, listening to him talk briefly with Linda downstairs, then the sound of the front door closing. Through the window, I watched him walk to his car, a leased BMW that would be repossessed soon, and drive away. Linda came up a few minutes later. How do you feel? I don't know. Tired. Did it help, hearing him admit it? A little. Not as much as I thought it would. She sat down in the chair Kevin had just vacated. What happens now? Now Kevin goes to prison. Rachel disappears into whatever new identity she creates. Technova's assets get liquidated to pay back investors. And we try to figure out how to live with what happened. Do you regret it? Any of it? I thought about that. The investigation, the media exposure, the systematic destruction of everything Kevin had built. Did I regret it? No, I said. He needed to face consequences. They both did. I just wish... I trailed off. Wish what? I wish it hadn't been necessary. I wish Kevin had been stronger. I wish Rachel had never existed. I wish a lot of things. Linda reached across the desk, took my hand. We'll get through this. Will we? We have to. What's the alternative? She was right. There was no alternative. This was our life now. Damaged, complicated, haunted by betrayal. But it was still our life. We had to find a way to live it. The SEC filed formal charges against Kevin 6 weeks after our conversation. The indictment was extensive. Wire fraud, securities fraud, making false statements to investors. Each charge carried significant prison time. Kevin's lawyers tried to negotiate, but the SEC wasn't interested in deals. They had too much evidence, too many victims. Kevin had stolen from his own father, defrauded investors, and misled the public. They wanted to make an example of him. Rachel, meanwhile, had vanished. True to form, she'd made her deal with prosecutors and disappeared. James tracked her to California, where she was apparently reinventing herself yet again. New name, new look, new social media presence. The woman was a chameleon, just like her former business partner had said. Kevin asked to see me before the trial. We met at a coffee shop near the courthouse, neutral ground. He looked thinner, older. Prison was looming, and he knew it. Thank you for coming, he said. I almost didn't. I know, I wouldn't have blamed you. He stirred his coffee, not drinking it. I've been thinking a lot about what you said, about choices, about how they add up. And you were right. I made so many wrong choices. But the first one, the biggest one, was listening to Rachel. She got into my head, made me think I deserved more than I'd earned, that taking from you was somehow justified. She didn't force you. You could have said no at any point. I could have, but I didn't want to. That's the truth. I wanted the money, I wanted the success. I wanted it all, and I didn't care what it cost. He finally met my eyes. I was a terrible son. Yes. Is there any chance, after this is over, after I've served my time, is there any chance we could have a relationship again? I'd been asking myself that question for weeks. Could I forgive Kevin? Could I let him back into my life after everything he'd done? I don't know, I said. Ask me again in 5 years. 5 years might be optimistic. My lawyers think I'm looking at 7 to 10. Then ask me in 10 years. He nodded slowly. Fair enough. The trial started 2 weeks later. I testified on the second day, spent 4 hours on the stand detailing Kevin's theft, the forged signatures, the misappropriation of funds. Kevin's lawyers tried to paint me as vindictive, as a father who couldn't accept his son's success. But the evidence was too strong. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. They found Kevin guilty on all counts. The sentencing hearing was 3 weeks after that. The judge was a stern woman in her 60s who'd clearly seen too many cases like Kevin's, young, privileged men who thought they were above consequences. Mr. Lawson, she said, you had every advantage: education, family support, talent, and you squandered it all through greed and dishonesty. You stole from your own father. You defrauded investors who trusted you. You lied repeatedly and showed no remorse until you were caught. Kevin stood silently, his lawyer beside him. The court sentences you to 8 years in federal prison, followed by 3 years of supervised release. You will also be required to pay restitution to all victims, including your father, in the amount of $3.2 million. $3.2 million. More than Kevin had stolen from me once you factored in the damages to investors who'd trusted my name. He'd be paying it off for the rest of his life. Linda and I left the courthouse after the sentencing. Reporters shouted questions, but we ignored them, walked to our car in silence. It wasn't until we were on the highway, heading back to the suburbs, that Linda spoke. "How do you feel?" "I don't know. Empty, relieved, sad, all of it." "Me too." We drove the rest of the way in silence. Life slowly returned to a new normal. I kept consulting, though I was more selective about clients now. Linda joined a book club, started volunteering at the library. We talked about traveling, about seeing parts of the world we'd always meant to visit. We were trying to rebuild, to find meaning in a life that had been shattered. Kevin sent letters from prison. I didn't read the first few. Eventually, Linda convinced me to at least open them. They were apologetic, reflective. Kevin wrote about the other inmates, about the monotony of prison life, about the therapy he was receiving. He seemed to be genuinely working on himself, trying to understand how he'd gone so wrong. I didn't write back, not at first. But after 6 months, I sent a brief response. "I received your letters. I'm glad you're getting help. Focus on becoming someone better than who you were." It wasn't forgiveness, but it was communication. A thin thread connecting father and son across the damage. Rachel surfaced briefly, a year after Kevin's conviction. Someone recognized her in Los Angeles, posted about it online. She was using the name Victoria Reed now, working as a lifestyle coach and building a new following. The internet never forgot, though. People dug up her history, exposed her again. She disappeared once more. I wondered if she'd ever stop running, ever face what she'd done. Probably not. People like Rachel didn't change. They just found new victims. One evening, 2 years after Kevin's conviction, Linda and I were having dinner when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Mr. Lawson, this is Warden Brooks from FCI Oakwood. I'm calling about your son." My stomach dropped. "What happened?" "He's fine. Actually, he's more than fine. He's been a model prisoner, completed his GED teaching certification, started working with other inmates. He's requested to put you on his visitor list. I wanted to verify you'd be willing before we approved it." I looked at Linda. She nodded. "Yes," I said. "I'll visit." The prison was 3 hours away. We drove up on a Saturday morning, went through security, waited in a stark visiting room filled with plastic chairs and vending machines. Other families waited too, wives, children, parents. All of us connected by the choices our loved ones had made. Kevin came out in prison khakis, thinner but somehow healthier looking than at the trial. His eyes were clearer. He smiled when he saw us. "Mom, Dad, thank you for coming." We sat at one of the tables. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Linda broke the silence. "You look good, honey." "I feel good. Better than I have in years." He turned to me. "I got your letter, that you're glad I'm getting help." "Are you? Getting help?" "Yeah, real help. I'm seeing a therapist twice a week. Group sessions. I'm teaching GED classes to other inmates. It's good. It gives me purpose. That's important. I've been thinking about what you said at the coffee shop, about choices adding up. I'm trying to make better ones now. Small ones, but better, like teaching. Like being honest, actually honest, about what I did and why. We talked for an hour. Kevin told us about his classes, about inmates he was helping, about books he was reading. He asked about our lives, seemed genuinely interested. It wasn't the relationship we'd had before. That was gone forever. But it was something, a beginning of something new. As visiting hours ended, Kevin stood to leave. "Can I hug you?" he asked. "Both of you." Linda hugged him first, held him tight. Then it was my turn. I hesitated for just a second, then embraced my son. He felt smaller than I remembered, more fragile, but also more real, somehow. More human. "I'm sorry, Dad," he whispered, "for everything." "I know. Do you think you'll ever forgive me?" "I'm working on it." It was the most honest answer I could give. 3 years into Kevin's sentence, I got a call from an unexpected source, one of the investors Kevin had defrauded. His name was Thomas Brennan, owned a small tech firm that had invested $200,000 in Technova. "Mr. Lawson, I wanted to thank you," he said. "Thank me?" "For exposing your son. I know it couldn't have been easy, turning on family like that. But if you hadn't, more people would have lost more money. You did the right thing." After he hung up, I sat thinking about those words. The right thing. Was it? I'd destroyed my son's life, sent him to prison. ensured he'd spend years behind bars. All because he'd stolen from me, yes, but also because I'd been angry, hurt, betrayed. Had it been justice, or had it been revenge? Linda found me in my office, staring at the wall. "You okay?" Brennan called, one of Kevin's victims. He thanked me for exposing Kevin. "That's good, isn't it?" "I don't know. I keep wondering if I did the right thing. Kevin was wrong, absolutely wrong. But did I have to destroy him completely? Could I have handled it differently?" Linda sat down. "You gave him a chance. You confronted him, showed him the evidence, asked him to make it right. He chose not to. What else could you have done? Maybe pushed harder, maybe found a way to separate him from Rachel before things got this bad. Rachel was a symptom, Daniel, not the cause. Kevin made his own choices. You didn't force him to steal, you didn't force him to lie. He did that himself." I knew she was right, but the doubt lingered. In the quiet moments, late at night, I wondered about alternate timelines. What if I'd caught it earlier? What if I'd been a better father, more involved, more aware? Would Kevin have turned out differently? There were no answers, only questions and regrets and the slow process of learning to live with both. Kevin continued to improve in prison. He completed his teaching certification, started helping inmates prepare for life after release. The warden sent me updates occasionally, seemed genuinely impressed with Kevin's progress. "Your son has become a leader here," Warden Brooks told me during one of our visits. "Other inmates look up to him. He's honest about his mistakes, uses his story to help others avoid similar paths." I watched Kevin teach a GED class one day through a window in the prison's education wing. He was patient with the inmates, encouraging, kind. This was a side of him I'd never seen before. Prison had stripped away the arrogance, the entitlement, left someone more genuine behind. Maybe that was worth something. Rachel surfaced again, briefly, when a documentary crew tracked her down. They were making a film about social media fraud, wanted to interview her about her fake influencer past. She refused, threatened legal action, disappeared again. The documentary aired anyway, featured her story prominently. The internet exploded with renewed outrage. I didn't watch it. I'd moved on from Rachel. She was irrelevant now, a footnote in a larger story about betrayal and consequences. What mattered was Kevin, and whether there was any path forward for us. 4 years into his sentence, Kevin became eligible for early release review. Good behavior, completion of programs, positive contributions to the prison community, all factors that could reduce his sentence. His lawyer called me, asked if I'd be willing to write a letter to the parole board. "What would you want me to say?" I asked. "That you believe he's changed, that you support his release, that you think he's learned from his mistakes." "Do I believe those things?" "I can't answer that for you, Mr. Lawson." I thought about it for days. Linda encouraged me to write the letter, said everyone deserved a second chance. But I wasn't sure. Kevin had hurt me deeply. Writing that letter felt like betrayal of myself, of the pain I'd endured. Finally, I sat down and wrote, "To the parole board, my name is Daniel Lawson. I am Kevin Lawson's father and his victim. 4 years ago, my son stole from me, lied to me, and destroyed our relationship. I testified against him at trial. I wanted him to face consequences for his actions. Since his incarceration, Kevin has written to me regularly. I have visited him several times. I have watched him work to become a better person. I cannot say I have fully forgiven him. That process is ongoing and may never be complete. But I can say that the man in prison today is not the same man who committed these crimes. He has shown genuine remorse, worked to make amends, and dedicated himself to helping others avoid his mistakes. I support his early release. He has earned a second chance. Daniel Lawson." I sent the letter and waited. 3 months later, Kevin called. "They approved it, Dad. I'm getting out in 6 months. Early release for good behavior." "Congratulations." "I wouldn't be getting out if you hadn't written that letter. The board said your support was a major factor. You earned it. You did the work. I want to see you when I get out. And Mom, if you're willing. We'll be there." The day of Kevin's release, Linda and I drove to the prison. It was a clear morning, early spring, the kind of day that felt like new beginnings were possible. We waited outside the gates with a small crowd of other families, all of us there to reclaim pieces of our lives. Kevin emerged carrying a single box of belongings. He'd aged in prison, gray at his temples now, lines around his eyes, but he smiled when he saw us, a genuine smile full of relief and hope. "Hi," he said simply. "Hi," I replied. We drove him to a halfway house where he'd spend the next 6 months transitioning back to society. On the way, Kevin talked about his plans. Getting a job, maybe teaching, staying away from tech and business, simpler goals, humble goals. I'm not the person I was, he said. I won't go back to being that person. I believe you. At the halfway house, we helped Kevin get settled in his small room. Linda gave him some clothes she'd brought, some toiletries. I handed him a prepaid cell phone. Stay in touch, I said. I will, every day if you want. Maybe not every day, but regularly. Kevin looked at me, and I saw tears in his eyes. Thank you, Dad, for not giving up on me, for giving me another chance. Don't waste it. I won't. We left him there, starting his new life. In the car, Linda cried quietly. Happy tears, she said. Relieved tears. I felt something too, though I couldn't quite name it. Not forgiveness, not yet. But maybe the possibility of forgiveness. The sense that healing, however slow, might be possible. Kevin stayed at the halfway house for 6 months, worked as a janitor at a community center, attended mandated therapy sessions. He called once a week, updated us on his progress, small things, got a library card, joined a group for ex-convicts trying to rebuild their lives, started volunteering at a literacy program. He was building a new identity, piece by piece, not Kevin Lawson, former tech mogul. Just Kevin, a man trying to do better. Linda and I visited him once a month. We'd get coffee at a place near the halfway house, talk for an hour or two. The conversations were careful at first, avoiding anything too heavy. But gradually we started discussing real things. Kevin talked about his regrets, about how prison had forced him to confront who he'd become. I talked about my own journey, the anger, the need for revenge, the slow realization that destroying Kevin hadn't healed anything. I was so focused on making you pay, I admitted during one visit, that I didn't stop to think about whether it would make me feel better. It didn't, not really. Kevin nodded. I get that. I wanted success so badly that I didn't think about what it would cost. We're not that different, you and me. Don't compare what I did to what you did. I'm not. I'm just saying we both got obsessed with outcomes and forgot about everything else. He had a point. My crusade against Kevin had consumed me for months. I'd sacrificed sleep, peace, relationships. I'd become someone single-minded and cold. And while I'd achieved my goal, Kevin had faced consequences. The victory felt hollow. Justice and satisfaction weren't the same thing. After his halfway house term ended, Kevin moved into a small apartment across town. He got a job at a nonprofit helping at-risk youth, using his story as a cautionary tale. He was good at it, apparently. His supervisor called me once, said Kevin had a gift for connecting with troubled kids. He's honest about his mistakes, the supervisor said. Doesn't sugarcoat anything. The kids respect that. Kevin started dating someone, a teacher he'd met through the literacy program. Her name was Beth, and she knew everything about his past. She'd looked him up online, read the articles, seen the court documents, and she'd decided to give him a chance anyway. She's the opposite of Rachel, Kevin told me when he introduced us. Real, honest. She doesn't care about money or status. She just wants someone genuine. Beth was indeed nothing like Rachel. She was plain-spoken, worked at an underfunded public school, drove a 15-year-old Honda. She looked at Kevin like he was a normal person, not a project or a meal ticket. It was refreshing. He talks about you a lot, Beth told me when Kevin stepped away to get coffee. About what happened, about what he did. It still eats at him. Good, it should. He's working hard to be better. I think he's succeeding. Time will tell. But I was starting to believe it. Kevin was different now, humbler, more aware. The arrogance that had defined him before prison was gone, replaced by something quieter and more solid. 5 years after his conviction, Kevin asked if he could come to Thanksgiving dinner. It would be the first major family gathering since everything fell apart. Linda was enthusiastic. I was hesitant. Are you ready for that? I asked her. He's our son, Daniel, and it's been 5 years. If we're ever going to move forward, we have to start somewhere. What if it's too soon? Then we'll know, but I think it's time. Thanksgiving was small, just the 4 of us. Linda, me, Kevin, and Beth. We made turkey and all the traditional sides, set the table, tried to create normalcy. It was awkward at first. Kevin was overly polite, Beth was nervous, and I was still processing the strangeness of having my son at my table after everything. But somewhere during dinner, something shifted. Kevin told a funny story about one of the kids he worked with. Beth chimed in with teaching anecdotes. Linda laughed, genuinely laughed, for the first time in months. And I found myself relaxing, participating, almost enjoying it. It wasn't perfect. There were still wounds, still silences where difficult topics lurked. But it was something. It was progress. After dinner, Kevin asked if we could talk privately. We went to my office, same room where I'd planned his destruction years ago. He closed the door and stood awkwardly for a moment. "I've been saving money," he said finally. "From my job, from doing side work. I know I'll never be able to pay back the full restitution, but I wanted to start making symbolic payments. To you, specifically." He handed me an envelope. Inside was a check for $5,000. "Kevin, you don't have to." "I do. You wrote that letter to the parole board. You gave me a second chance when you had every reason not to. This is me trying to earn that chance. Trying to prove I'm not the person who stole from you." I looked at the check. $5,000 was probably months of savings for Kevin, living on a nonprofit salary. It was significant for him, even if it was a drop in the bucket compared to what he'd taken. "Thank you," I said. "There'll be more, every few months as I can manage it. It'll take decades, maybe the rest of my life, but I'll pay you back, all of it." "That's not necessary." "It is for me." We stood there, father and son, separated by years of pain but trying to build a bridge across it. It would be a long process. There would be setbacks and difficult moments. But for the first time, I believed it was possible. Kevin left that evening with Beth. Linda and I cleaned up, put away leftovers, washed dishes. Neither of us spoke much, but the silence was comfortable. That night, lying in bed, Linda asked, "How are you feeling?" "Better than I have in years." "Me too. I'm not ready to say I forgive him. Not completely. But I think I'm getting there." "That's enough for now." She was right. It was enough.